Do you like the idea of protecting people? Can you work in the face of danger? Do you want to help people figure out the legal system? Then a career in the law, public safety, corrections, and security cluster may interest you. Law, public safety, corrections, and security workers are found in a variety of settings. They're police officers, security guards, attorneys, paralegals, FBI agents, and firefighters. Other workers provide legal services to people who are accused of committing crimes. For example, you might monitor activities within a prison, guide clients through legal proceedings, or research legal procedures to support court cases. There are over 40 careers across 5 pathways in law, public safety, corrections, and security cluster. The pathways include emergency and fire management services, law enforcement services, legal services, correction services, security and protective services.
I went to school to be an architect, and then I switched my majors to be a nurse. And while I was waiting to get into the nursing program, I took an EMT class. Through that EMT class is when I met some people that worked at Lytton Ambulance Service, and one of them happened to be the owner's wife. And she asked me if I would like to come and do some ride-alongs. And I found that I really liked emergency medical services. And so I rode along with them for a while, and then when I got my EMT license, they offered me a job. And I worked with Lytton Ambulance Service from the time I was 18 till the time I was 21 for 3 years. From there, I left the ambulance service and came to the fire department, responding to calls, taking care of people in the community, taking care of their house fires or car fires and stuff like that. And then I worked my way up through the ranks. I became a lieutenant. I did building code enforcement and life safety inspections for all of the buildings in the city of Mount Vernon. And from that, I got promoted to assistant fire chief, and I served there for 11 years. And then when the fire chief retired, I moved up and was promoted to fire chief. And my job is to make sure that all the guys that work at the department has the equipment they need to do their jobs. I do all the paperwork, and I do all the ordering and the budgeting and everything for the department. So we have 3 shifts. So you're working one day. So today, the guys that are on duty work Friday. They're off Saturday, Sunday, and then they come back to work on Monday at 8 a.m. That day is a 24-hour day. So they come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they go home at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then they're off for 2 days. So a typical day of a firefighter, they come in, they get the notes from the shift commander from the day before, what happened, what equipment might be out of service, what issues happened the day before. They check their trucks and make sure that all this equipment that's around me is in ready to go order. So if they get a call, they can head out and take care of whatever the problem is. So they do that. It takes them about an hour and a half, 2 hours to do that. If it's Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, they'll go into training. So they'll train from basically 9 o'clock till noon, then they'll take a lunch break, and then they'll train on other aspects of firefighting or EMS from 1 o'clock till about 4:30 or 5. At 5 o'clock is their downtime. So it's no different than anybody else going to a normal 8 to 5 job. However, 5 o'clock becomes their time. The only thing they have to do is be available and ready to respond to calls. Everybody's like, oh, that's a great gig. Why don't we do that? Well, that's the deal. So at 5 o'clock, you could sit in a recliner, you can watch TV, you can play video games, you could cook a meal, you can do whatever you want. If the horn goes off, they've got to go and take care of that call. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, they could still be running calls. And so, they just get to rest basically whenever they can fit it in. So that's kind of the caveat of a day in a firefighter. Then at 8 o'clock in the morning, the next shift comes on, and these guys will go home. Firefighting is an all-encompassing job where you have to have multifaceted information and knowledge on how to handle different situations. We fight fires. We also handle medical emergencies. We're paramedics, so that means that we give medications. We do certain things to people with advanced skills where we may have to keep somebody breathing, like intubating them, where we stick a tube down their throat, their trachea, so we can breathe for them. all the way up to responding to a hazardous materials incident. We have railroads, we have interstates. There's constantly chemicals going up and down all through our community. And we may have to go and take care of a chemical spill. So we get into, you have to have a knowledge of chemistry. And if you mix two chemicals together, how do we dilute that chemical, or how do we make that chemical safe so that we can clean it up and so it doesn't cause problems? Then you get into specialized stuff like high angle rescue, you get into vehicle extrication, machinery extrication. We have a lot of industry around here. So we have to work with those industries to know that if somebody gets caught in one of their machine processes, we have to know how to get them out of that machine in the most efficient amount of time. So there's a lot of knowledge you have to be aware of. We are sworn to protect and to serve, and that means we protect and serve all the people of our community, whether they live here or whether they're traveling through here. I mentioned we have interstates. I look at it from a standpoint of they're having their worst day of their life. And we get to go and we get to help them through that day of their life. And sometimes we don't have a favorable outcome. Sometimes we have to deal with things that you wouldn't think that you have to deal with. Death is one of those. When you're dealing with human life, you're also dealing with human death. The greatest part of this job is being able to go out and help the people. The other great part of this job is no day is ever the same. When the horn goes off and we're responding to a call, we don't know what that call is going to present to us. What we know is we have to analyze, we have to adapt, and we have to overcome and try to make that person or that situation stop so we can help somebody through that process. You have to have a vast array of a skill set. And it's not that you have to know certain amounts of chemistry or certain amounts of engineering. You have to know a little bit of all of that stuff. We tell people, go to college, get a degree. It doesn't have to be in firefighting. We prefer that you get an associate's degree in firefighting or emergency medical services, but we really want people just to have a well-rounded knowledge of a little bit of everything. Firefighting is science. Chemistry, I mentioned, hazmat. We have to know English. We have to know report writing. We have to give a report on every call that we go on. We have to write and document everything that happened, because in the world, people can sue other people, and you may end up in court over a run sheet that you wrote on patient care from a year ago. Mathematics, people are like, you don't have to know math to be a firefighter. Well, yeah, you do, because algebra goes into the friction loss of how much water do we put on a fire to overcome the amount of heat that it's generating. Or I'm a paramedic, so I have to do calculations to draw up a drug to give to somebody to save their life. And if I draw up too much of that drug or overdose them, I could kill them. So we have to mathematically figure that out and give that medication to that person so we can help them, not hurt them. If you're interested in firefighting and emergency medical services, go out and volunteer. When you're 16, some departments will allow you to be a junior volunteer, where you can learn the ins and outs of the fire service. You can start taking some classes at 16 years old, like first responder classes. And then as you go through there, you can volunteer. When you turn 18, you can become a full-fledged volunteer at your local community fire department. You can start taking EMT classes through Rend Lake College. You can take paramedic classes at Rend Lake College, and other colleges as well. But I like to promote Rend Lake because I happen to teach the program there. The Mount Vernon High School has a fire science program that's taught by two very good friends of mine, Chris Shinny, who's a captain on the fire department, and Brian Jennings, who's a firefighter. And it's a CTE program. You can get into that program and learn a little bit about firefighting and EMS as a junior and a senior. So I encourage people to seek out those classes and talk to people who are in the field. Stay true to yourself, pay attention, help and volunteer. And if you have a knack for helping people, this is a good place. Yes, I'm a career firefighter, There are volunteer fire departments that, it's not a career. You're not getting paid every day for being there. Those folks are the bread and butter of our community. Those volunteer firefighters and EMTs and paramedics are the people who really make everything work. Those are the people who work normal jobs and then they go and do this on the side as a volunteer. We're doing it day to day, day in, day out on a professional level. A volunteer is doing it to help their community, and you're doing the same stuff we're doing. Working on an emergency medical call is the same. It doesn't make a difference whether you're paid to do it or whether you're volunteering to do it. That aspect of the job is identical. And we work side by side with volunteers all the time, and I will tell you, they're the best group of people I've ever worked with. They're dedicated, they're hardworking, and they get out and get the job done. Now, if you want a career in firefighting, we invite you to come join the Mount Vernon Fire Department or any other career fire department around the nation. They're out there. But what I will say is this: when you go to pick a career, pick one that has sustainability. The healthcare, there will always be people getting sick. There will always be people having emergencies. Those careers are there and they're embedded. It's not going away, in other words. So try to find a career that's rewarding, number one, that you're interested in, number two, and you want to look for something that has benefits. And when I say benefits, I mean paid health insurance, paid vacation time, things like that. Those are the things you need to look for and ask about if you want a career in firefighting. If you're just interested in it and you think you'd like to do it, go volunteer. Volunteer for your local fire department or your local ambulance service and see what it's like and get your feet wet.
When I started college, I wanted to do some type of profession that either helped people or involved kids. I was debating between law enforcement, social work, or teaching. I was weighing all the options for all three of those professions. I narrowed it down to law enforcement or teaching. While working part-time at Little Caesars here in Mount Vernon, I had a coworker a couple years younger than me. He was in and out of trouble with police. He was on probation at the time. We had a conversation one evening while we were working, and he said if he were to have either a probation officer or a law enforcement officer that had compassion and patience, it would give him a chance, he would have made more of an effort to better himself. When I got home that night, I was thinking about that conversation that he and I had, and from then on I decided, I'm gonna go into law enforcement. I think I could make an impression on someone like I did my coworker, and hopefully build a better relationship between law enforcement officers and especially kids in the community. I went through Ren Lake College, got my associates in applied science, specifically in criminal justice. I then was fortunate enough to get into the bachelor's degree program at Ren Lake College through Missouri Baptist University. Was able to graduate with my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. That's when I started applying at different departments. In order to get into law enforcement, whether it's policing or corrections, you have to go through a specific type of testing process. That would include a written test and a physical to start off with. In Illinois, the physical test, I say, is pretty difficult compared to other states, but it's nowhere near out of reach for someone. You'll do a written test, and then if you get past both of those, then you'll have an interview with the head guys or gals at whatever department it is, and they'll compile a list, an eligibility list, and everyone on that list is given a specific point value. You get extra points for military involvement or schooling. Whenever they decide they're going to start hiring, they're going to go through top to bottom on their list, and wherever you fall is where you fall, and you just kind of have to wait your turn. For me, I was fortunate enough whenever I started testing, I was within the top 5 on the list for Mount Vernon. They just so happened to be hiring 4 people right off the bat off of that list. So I was given the opportunity to get right into the police academy. They would send us to the academy for 14 weeks. And once you're done with that 14 weeks, then you have another 14 weeks of training at your department with your field training officer, or your FTO is what we call it. And then once you pass your field training, then you're on your own. A typical day is kind of unheard of in law enforcement. So it's a job that keeps you on your toes a lot of the time. It's not a standard 9 to 5, I come in, I do the same thing every day and I go home. For us, we never know what's gonna happen, today. We could have a million calls that come out, or we could have days where we're sitting around, patrolling around, and not a whole lot of action is going on. A typical day is not so typical whenever you're talking about law enforcement. I've worked various areas on the patrol aspect. That could be working night shift, I've worked day shift, and just recently, within the past 2 years, I was given the position of school resource officer. I work within Mount Vernon City Schools, from kids ages preschool all the way up through 8th grade. Since I'm in the schools, the school aspect of my job is what I love. I love interacting with my kids at District 80. I enjoy hanging out with them in their PE classes. That's where I can kind of interact and play the games or play the sports with them. They get to know me kind of outside of the, oh my gosh, that's a police officer kind of vibe that I would give off. I enjoy this, the kids will come up and they'll ask questions, about the equipment that I'm wearing, or they'll ask me kind of some legal questions. Even the 8th graders, they'll ask me some legal questions, or what would you do in this situation type questions. And I try to answer as honestly with them, age appropriately honestly with them about any questions they have. And I think that builds better relationships with the kids, that hopefully they take that with them as they get older, and it's gonna help build more positive relationships with the community in the future. Police officers aren't out to get you. We're not specifically out to get you in trouble or arrest you. And I sometimes get asked a lot, well, have you ever shot anybody? I hate getting that question because that's not something that you would want to brag about. I get questions a lot about how many people I've arrested, or why I arrested so-and-so's brother or so-and-so's mom. I always say I take people to jail who make poor choices, who make poor decisions that affect other people. If you don't make poor choices, you're a good student, you're a good person, you're respectful to other people, you won't have any issues with law enforcement. It's those that make the poor choices and, disrespect other people, sometimes even get physical with other people. Those are the people that will see me or my fellow officers a lot more, just because of the choices that you're making. Be a good person, be a kind person, respect others. Know that we're here to help. We're not here to, run you through the mud and get you in trouble. We're here to protect people. That's why any of us took this job. We're here to protect and serve, and that's what we try to do to the best of our abilities. We have patrol, which is what I do whenever I'm not in the schools. We have the school resource officers. Aside from that, we also have detectives who, anytime we get a report, we give it to them and they do a little bit more investigating into our report. We also have special units that you can be a part of that is canine. So the police dogs, you have to be selected to be a canine handler. We also have the HRT team, which is our high risk team or SWAT team. And you have to be in top physical condition to do the SWAT team. You're carrying a lot more equipment than what I carry on a normal basis, or what a patrol officer would carry on a normal basis. Then you have ranks within the patrol side and the detective side. So we have corporals, who is the next shift commander. Above them are sergeants. Above the sergeants, we have captains. Above the captains are our assistant chief and our chief. We have quite a few dispatchers. They're gonna ask a bunch of questions that anyone needs to really pay attention to. Our dispatchers are really good at gathering as much information from the caller as possible. And without our dispatchers being as good as they are getting that information, we would kind of go in blind and not know what we're walking up to. We have our secretaries as well that definitely help us out, kind of taking care of more of the administrative side of the police department. You have to know how to communicate with people and explain what you need from them or what you'd like from them, and be able to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, in a way that they understand. Good writing skills, good English skills. We write reports constantly. Honesty. You have to be honest. You have to have the trust of the community. You have to kind of be transparent with people. You don't deceive them. You have to be able to be honest and say, yes, this is what's going to happen, or no, that's not what's going to happen, or yes, that's correct, no, that's not. You have to be honest with the public. Controlling your emotions, it's something that just you have to learn. How to. Sometimes when someone's yelling and screaming and cursing at you for whatever reason, you have to learn to kind of bite your tongue and still be professional. We have to be fair to the person that's yelling and screaming at us, just as the person that we pull over and is super nice to us, says, "I'm sorry, officer, I didn't realize I was speeding." We have to be in control of our emotions 100% of the time whenever we're on duty. I don't have any regrets when I chose law enforcement as my career. There's so many different opportunities within law enforcement you can get into. I say do it. Go for it. Specifically, I would love to see more women in law enforcement. We need more diversity in the field, and I think more women are for sure one that we need to have. Also, a thing to consider is usually around the age of 18 or older, you can do a ride-along, and you'll be able to ride along in the front seat and kind of get a view from our side to see what kind of calls we respond to, how we respond to calls, why we respond with the lights and sirens sometimes, and then why we don't. Anybody who's interested in law enforcement, do ride-alongs, not just at one department, do them with a bunch of departments. But as far as any additional information, it's probably best just to talk to an officer about it. We won't bite you if you want to come and ask us a question. Being curious, that's absolutely acceptable. Write down your ideas or your questions and talk to an officer about anything that you have.
If you are interested in a career in law, public safety, corrections, and security, Grinlake College is here to help you prepare with programs to develop the knowledge and skills needed. RLC has career technical education programs such as Criminal Justice Associate of Applied Science degree, Police and Corrections Certificate, Private Protection Certificate, or transfer degree programs such as Criminal Justice Associate of Arts degree, Pre-Law Associate of Arts degree, or Associate of Science degree.